If you want some FIFA 23 coins, please check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use code Rema you can get yourself a 5% discount. So what is up guys, my name's Ash and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, I've got some custom tactics and player instructions for a formation that I started using last night and today, and I've finally settled on something that I really like. The formation is the 4-3-2-1, and the reason that I tried this out was because I see a lot of people on YouTube nowadays saying this is the meta formation, this is the best one, this carried me to rank 1. So I was like, you know what, I'll give it a go, I'll see if I can find something I like, because one of the most important things about this game is learning multiple styles, learning different tactics, learning different formations, because when you come up against those top players you need to have a plan B, a plan C, because that will sometimes carry you to those extra wins. So yeah, I thought I'd give it a go and I've settled on what I like. And yeah, just before we get into today's video though guys, I'd very much appreciate it if you could drop it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you are new so you never miss out on any videos like this one, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you are notified when a video is posted. And with all that aside guys, let's get right into today's video. Okay guys, so starting off with the custom tactics, for the defensive style I like to use balanced. I use this with pretty much every setup I use in FIFA 23. The reason being is because it gives you greater control in your defensive game. You can press when you want to press and you can be more conservative when you need to be. So it does allow you to be a lot better in your defensive game. I know people like to use pressure tactics, but I'm not a big fan, and if you can get used to balance you will become a much better player as a result. But if you want to use pressure tactics because you feel more comfortable with that, that's absolutely fine, go right ahead. Now for the defensive width guys, I have this on 40. FIFA 23 is a narrow game, right? So it makes sense that you want to defend in a narrow manner to combat all the narrow attacks. So we have a narrow defensive width in 40, but this still gives us the natural width that we need to cover the wings as well. If you look at the diagram in the bottom right, you can see we primarily defend very narrowly, but let's say my opponent tries to go down the wing, we are also able to reach those areas in time to stop the attack. So it is very well balanced, but it does primarily focus on the narrow game. Now moving on to depth, I like to have this on 60. I think this formation is pretty aggressive when you are attacking, so if you can win the ball higher up the pitch it is very beneficial. A lot of people struggle to deal with through balls, but if you can learn to track that run before they make that pass, it does become a lot easier. And if you can win the ball higher up the pitch, it's a lot easier to score goals because your opponent doesn't have time to drop back as quickly. But if you want to lower your depth, that is absolutely fine. And similarly, if you want to use the automatic offside trap, go ahead and have that on 72, but I'm currently just using this on 60. Now moving on to build up play guys, I have this on balance for this formation. This is because I tried fast build up when I originally tried it out, and I felt like my players were moving a little bit too quickly for the formation, even though we are trying to be fast in our game. So I like to have this on balance as we still have a bit more of a structure, and we seem to have a few better transitions. I don't know, I just found it a bit easier using balance with this formation. Moving on to chance creation guys, as always I suggest direct passing. The reason for this is it's the only setting which will allow your attackers to penetrate through the defensive line. If you look at the diagram in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, you'll see the attackers, which are your white dots, they're actively moving around to break the defensive line. If you look at something like balance, this doesn't happen. They're very static, which means you can find it difficult to, break through your opponent's defense. Now moving on to attacking width guys, because it's a narrow formation you want to attack quite narrowly, so I have this on 37. The reason for this is I know this seems quite low, but I find it easier to link passes together when I have a lower width, because the further apart that your players are, the more difficult it is to consistently connect passes because it's over a greater distance. So I've noticed when I have a lower width on about 37, this was like the sweet spot for me. I found it easier to link up the play. I even found it easier to do those direct passes because players are just a bit closer together. If you want to up that width you can, but honestly I've been really enjoying this formation on 37 width. Now moving on to players in box guys, I have this on 5. The reason for this is I like to get some players into the box, but at the same time I don't want to overcommit my entire team, so I found a good balance in 5. I pretty much use this for every formation that I use in this game. Now moving on to corners and free kicks, this one's down to preference. I just have have this on 2 because I like to have some people in the box for set pieces, but at the same time, similarly to players in box, I don't want to overcommit my whole team so I don't get counter-attacked that easily. But if you want to up this or lower it, that is completely up to you. Now, moving on to the players you want to use, guys, this might look a little bit weird, but it will all make sense by the end of the video, I promise you that. In the striker position, because it is a one striker formation, you want to use a well-rounded striker. You know, if you can, get a player with a 5-star weak foot. You want somebody with good shooting stats, a player that can dribble, basically a player that can do everything that a striker needs to do, because you have to compensate for the fact that there is one striker instead of 2. So just go for someone well-rounded. But let's say you wanted to use a lengthy player, that's absolutely fine, go right ahead. Now in the centre forward positions, you just want to use, like, you know, those technical players, the fast players, you know, even like winger style players, just players that are good on the ball, players that can shoot, players that can dribble, cross, you know, players that can do a bit of everything in these positions. I'm currently just using Di Maria and Chiesa because they are good technical players. You don't want big clunky players in these positions, otherwise you will find it difficult to create those chances. Now in the right centre mid spot, you're going to see Phil Foden here for me, and what you want is a more attacking player in this role, like an actual attacker. You could use like Messi if you wanted to, Neymar. You want somebody that is good in attack, and this will make sense in the player instructions, so I'm not going to go into it too much here. But if you can, an added benefit for this player is a high work rate, because they're going to be attacking and then they're also going to transition into defense very well. But just go for an attacking player here by default and it will all make sense in the player instructions, I promise you. Now in the central centre mid spot, you're going to want a defensive stay back player. I'm using Patrick Vieira. The ideal work rate for this player is a medium high, but a medium and even a high is absolutely fine. You just want to go for somebody with very good defensive stats, as their main role is to defend in this formation. Now moving on to the left centre mid, you're going to want a more box to box centre mid, so somebody with very well rounded stats and a high work rate if you can get it. Park Ji-sung fits the criteria perfectly. He's got very well rounded stats, he's got the high work rate, he's got great stamina, he's got a bit of everything. If you need a player that can fill this role and you don't have many coins, just use Gold Renato Sanchez. He is perfect in this role, he will do the job just fine, even though he is a little bit outdated. Moving on to the left back and right back, I go for a bit of a balance. So I have my left back being more attacking minded in Theo Hernandez, and then my right back is more defensive in Kyle Walker. If you want, you can go for 2 attacking fullbacks or 2 defensive fullbacks, but I like to go for a bit of a balance, bearing in mind this will alter your player instructions. For the centre backs and goalkeeper, you just want these to be as good as possible. There's not really much to say here. Now for player instructions on the striker, because this is a direct formation, it makes sense that you have direct instructions on. So we have stay central and get in behind. These are very basic, but what it means is Keane will stay in those central areas, so he's always there when you need him to be. And we have him on getting behind, so he's always looking to break the defensive line, and we can play those direct passes to him. If I did want to play the ball short to him, I could just tap R1 and he will come short, but we need him to be very direct in his approach to attack. Now moving on to the right winger, the right forward, the centre forward, whatever, we just have stay central and mixed attack, and we leave everything else alone. The reason for this is we still want him to be in those central areas because it is a narrow formation and it makes sense that we have him in those positions. If we have him on, like, I don't know, balance width, sometimes he'll just drift off far too wide and he's very disconnected from the rest of the team. So we have him on stay central for the reason that he will stay involved in the attack in a narrow style. We have him on mixed attack because we don't just want this player getting in behind. Sometimes we might want him to sit a little bit deeper so he could then play that ball to the striker. You know, it just gives us a bit more attacking variation there. Now for the left forward, the left centre forward, whatever, we actually leave alone completely, and then we put on comeback on defence. Now this should start to make sense now. So if you look at Di Maria, Park Ji-sung, Vieira and Foden, those 4 players, this team is going to defend in a 4-4-2. So Robbie Keane and Chiesa will defend as like 2 strikers, Di Maria will defend as a left mid, Park Ji-sung will defend as a left centre mid, Vieira will defend as a right centre mid, and Foden will defend as a right mid. So I'm starting to think you guys will understand this now, which is important because it's how this team functions. We use 4-4-2 in defence because it's a lot more balanced and it's a lot easier to defend in that manner. So by putting Di Maria on comeback on defence, defense, he will actually come back to defend as that left mid in a 4-4-2. So it's very important you don't forget that instruction, guys. Now, moving on to the left centre mid, the more box-to-box style player, we have cover centre and stay back while attacking. Now, the reason we have stay back while attacking, even though he's a box-to-box player, is because we still don't want him to commit too much. We want him to go forward when we ask him to, even though he is a box-to-box player. So by having him on stay back while attacking, by default, we have a bit more defensive support, and when we want to go forward with him, we can. Cover centre is important because it means he's going to defend as one of the central centre mids in the 4-4-2. Moving on to the middle centre mid, the more defensive player, we just have stay back while attacking and cover centre. Again, we don't want this player to attack, we need him to stay back, so it's important that we have him on that instruction. And again, we have him on cover centre because we want him to defend in the middle of the 4-4-2. So Park Ji-sung and Vieira will be the two centre mids. Now for the right centre mid, the player that I said should be more of an attacker, we just have completely default settings, and the most important thing is cover wing, because this means he will defend as a right mid. So I hope you guys are starting to see how this works now. Di Maria and Foden will defend the wings as a right mid and left mid. Now the reason I said the high work rate is an added benefit is because when we do go forward, the high attacking work rate means he's going to transition very quickly to go forward, and when we lose the ball, the high defensive work rate means he's going to defend very quickly as well and get back into that position. So it is very, very cool if you can get it, but don't worry, just go for an attacking player like I said. Now for the fullbacks, like I said, I suggested a bit of a balance between these two players. So on the left back, I have balance, attack and overlap, because like I said, this is a narrow formation, so sometimes we need to get extra width out of the team. So with the more attacking fullback, I put balance, attack and overlap. This is so when we are attacking, Hernandez is going to go right up next to Di Maria, add a bit of extra width to the formation and allow us to go down the wings when we need to, just as an extra outlet. It's very important because sometimes you can get boxed in and it can be very difficult to create chances. The overlap instruction ensures that he will go out wide instead of coming narrow, which is very important because we don't need any more narrow players. Now for the more defensive fullback, we have stay back while attacking, and this is meant to be overlap. It reset, I'm sorry, but again, because he's more defensive, we want him to stay back for extra defensive security, but if we do trigger a run forward with him, we want him to overlap so we do get extra width. If your right back was your more attacking player, you could put this guy on balanced attack and the left back on stay back, but because Walker's my more defensive player, I have him on stay back and overlap. But yeah, they are my player instructions and custom tactics for the 4-3-2-1. If you guys have enjoyed or found this useful, I'd very much appreciate it if you could drop it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you are new so you never miss out on any videos like this one, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you are notified when a video is posted. And with all that aside, guys, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.